Hello and welcome to the Crisis Communications webinar. Thank you so much for joining me today and taking an hour out of your time to be here. I know we are all very busy. I hope the next 60 minutes will be super valuable for you. I am taking about 12 years of knowledge and experience and research and my heart and soul of what I've learned in insurance crisis management, laid it out in a way that I hope makes sense. And at the end, I'll give you a blueprint that you can use either at your brokerage or with your own client communications to help you reach out and be a better communicator when it's the worst time in someone's life, when you really need to be there the most. So let's get started. For today, I'm going to go a little bit about me, my background, and why I can talk about crisis communications. A case study I built around how things were handled around the Calgary floods. From there, I'm going to go into the well-known tenets of crisis communications. Then we're going to transition into the building blocks of a good crisis communication strategy, why we have the need for speed when we're doing crisis communications, what's holding brokers back from really implementing a strong crisis comms plan. I'm going to show you an example of the 0 to 60 minutes timeline from when a crisis hits to what you need to communicate in those first 60 minutes. And then at the end, you can download my crisis comms blueprint. So let's do it. Let's get started. All right, so a little bit about me. I have been in the insurance industry since 2012. I started out as a customer service representative at a large carrier, and then I moved into the broker sphere a year later and never left. I love brokers, brokers for life. And from there, a year later, I moved into marketing and communications. So I've been doing that for the last 10 years. I've run the marketing and communications departments at Rogers, now Acera, the Sharp group of companies, and now I'm currently with Trufla. And let me tell you, crisis comms is something I'm so passionate about, and I'll tell you why. So there is a nerdy side to me. I do have an honors undergraduate degree in psychology, specializing in behavioral psychology and cognition. And everything I do marketing related or comms related, I love looking up the latest studies, the latest research, and what motivates people, what gets that emotional response, and how do people behave under certain situations. And there are some little hacks that you learn when you study behavioral psychology and behavioral sciences. And one little tidbit I'm going to give you, there are so many. Hey, actually, there are so many that if you want me to do like a human behavioral hack to help you get more sales based on behavioral science, let me know or say yes in the chat and I'll build one for you. But a quick one for you. Say you're quoting a client and you're giving them, say, hey, according to the markets that I see in front of me, Aviva is the best coverage for you at $2,000 for your home insurance. That's like whatever, I can't do the math, $100, $150 a month. Do you want to go for it? So there's that way of quoting it. But do you know that if you tell someone the information and you say because and explain why it's a good fit for them, they're 37% more likely to say yes than if you don't say that because. So you can say something like, this coverage is a great fit for you because it protects your home from exactly the kind of flood risk we're seeing in your area. Try it. Let me know if it works and message me if it does. I love hearing if the science is really backed up. So I'm going to deep dive into the Calgary floods of 2013. Now, warning, this is a study on what not to do when there's a crisis. I'm not going to say the insurance company I was working for at this time, but it wasn't just the insurance company I was working at the time. There were others who mishandled one of the biggest crises hitting Calgary homeowners like ever. And I want to go through it. I might sound negative, but the negativity stems because I really believe that you learn what to do when you do it wrong. Growth mindset. So a little bit of background, if you're not familiar with what happened at the Calgary floods, I was actually in my first year at this insurance company. It was my first year in insurance when the most unprecedented natural disasters in Canadian history hit Calgary, and that was mass overland flooding. It was catastrophic. I mean, I was evacuated from my home. I was living near the river. There was a lot of uncertainty. Over 80,000 people were evacuated. And actually, in fact, the building where I worked in downtown Calgary was flooded, and we were evacuated. And we did have a crisis center in the event that the call center was down, and that crisis center was also flooded. That is how massive the scope of the area was for the Calgary floods and surrounding Albertan cities. Basically, insurance companies were not prepared for this. So what happened? So because we had to shut down our call center, the insurance company said we could ship you off to Edmonton and pay for your hotel, and you can work out of our Edmonton office for the week, or you have the week off. Well, I took the week off, but I took it off to volunteer in my community because in the area where I live, there was mass flooding. I mean, my apartment building was fine, but there were a lot of homes that were destroyed. So I wanted to be part of the cleanup crew. So that's me. Just before we were evacuated, that river is across the street from my house, and I'm watching it rise. It's usually about There's usually about 7 meters of cliff there, so you can see how high that water is. So yeah, I volunteered. I helped 40 households clean up after the floods. And the most common concern, the most negative thing, the outpouring of negativity, uncertainty, and hate was all directed towards the insurance companies, especially the insurance company I worked for. And this is why. There was zero proactive communications from this insurance company. They were just told you're not covered for overland. Done. Signed, sealed, delivered, no offer for help. Clients were left confused and angry and scared. I mean, if you remember back before 2013, I mean, we didn't really talk about flood insurance. It was all about sewer backup. In fact, flood insurance didn't exist until after this crisis happened. Fortunately, X Insurance Company, I'm going to call it X Insurance Company, had a huge market share in the Calgary area. So there is actually going to be an organized protest for this insurance company by customers who were outright refused help or coverage. And there was a lot of media backlash. It was so intense that I didn't tell people that I was in insurance, and I definitely didn't tell people I worked for that specific insurance company. So what happened? What went wrong? Why were people angry? And why did they go to the media and organize protests? The company that I worked for and several others, there were some that were great. There were many others that were not, especially the one that I worked for, went silent at a time when customers were going through the worst thing that could happen to them, needed reassurance. So during the flood, there was no like mass email sent out. Hey, look, you've been evacuated. You have additional living expenses, centers to help hand out supplies and ALE cards or whatever. None of that was happening. They hid behind the policy language. So many of my friends at this company had to flat out just read a script saying, because the proximate cause is overland water flooding, your policy that has sewer backup coverage does not take into effect even if there's sewer backup in your home. That's all we were allowed to say. No empathy, nothing. And when the backlash got so big against this company, that is when they decided to respond. And that's the worst thing you can do, is be reactive instead of proactive, because the damage was already done to the brand. Delaying any type of messaging says you're on your own, so sorry. Oh wait, the public hates us. It's going to affect our bottom line. We care now. That is not the reputation you want. And they really missed an opportunity to be a big leader in a time of crisis when people need someone to look up to for guidance. There were no field teams set up, no consistent spokesperson talking about it, no coordinated updates between leadership and the city of Calgary or anything. And trust was lost. So what happened? What was the backlash? What happened after the Calgary floods? Well, this is really interesting. So angry policyholders were left with no information, no support. There was an erosion of trust. They ended up canceling their policy because there was no clear communication and because they were just flat out denied no explanation, just quoting policy wording. Reputational damage, huge. I mean, they were all over the news. When your customers are organizing a public demonstration against you, I mean, you've lost your reputation and it's going to take a while to rebuild it. The government did have to intervene because insurers and insurance companies did not have overland flooding, so they had to come in and help recover some of the costs and cover the damages for clients. There were some companies like Aviva, I believe, who did offer coverage for overland flooding, even though it wasn't explicitly on their policy. In fact, it was an exclusion. That ended up causing a whirlwind of more confusion, such as why did Aviva cover it and this X company is not cover it? It was a giant storm of chaos, let me tell you. But it did lead to something positive, and it led to an industry-wide change. Now we have overland water coverage where we never had that before. 2 years later, it was developed and it's now widely accepted. So why are we building a communications plan? Why do we have a crisis communications plan? It's really simple. Because in a crisis, how you communicate defines whether you lose trust or you earn it for life. It's not only the right thing to do to be there for your people, your customers, to show up for them at a time where they're really confused, feeling emotionally supercharged, but it actually will increase loyalty and retention, and there are research and studies backed up to prove that. So not only are you doing the right thing, it is increasing your revenue. So I want to go over the 16 tenets of crisis communications. These are well-known tenets in people who work in crisis comms. I don't want you to freak out. I am not going to go in depth for all the 16 tenets. I'm going to pick my top 5, which I think are the most important in insurance communications specifically. And then the rest of them, the rest of the 11, you're going to see show up as we start to build that crisis communication strategy together during this webinar. Okay, so as we saw with Company X, the first thing they did wrong is that they did not lead with empathy. And empathy is everything. It's critical. It has to be at the base of whatever you do. Okay, because you're going in and talking to people who already mistrust insurance. They have what's called confirmation bias happening before they even pick up the phone to call you. Like, oh, my insurance company doesn't care. They just want to collect my premium. They're probably not going to cover all my losses. There's probably going to be red tape or something in the wording I didn't see. So they're already coming in with that confirmation bias. All right. So what you have to do, and what has a lot of impact, is say something like, I'm really sorry this happened to you. I know this is very scary and it's very uncertain for you, but we're here for you. We've got you. We're going to help you get through this. If you start off your communication like that, you've calmed down a major stress hormone that happens in someone's brain when they're going through crisis, and that is cortisol. I know all of you have heard of cortisol. It's everywhere, all over your TikTok reels, all over Instagram reels, but that hormone is real and it doesn't make you think rationally. And let me tell you, because it triggers that old brainstem part, the amygdala. That amygdala is that flight or fright part of your brain where you have a lot of triggers, like you're easily triggered by things. And what you want to do is, if you embrace your client with empathy and give them a warm hug with the words, I've got you, you're going to be okay, I'm going to walk you through this. That hug is releasing oxytocin in their brain. Oxytocin is a neurotransmitter that basically, it's called the oh my gosh, it's called like the trust. It's the trust neurotransmitter. It's also the neurotransmitter that new moms have when they hold their baby for that first time. It's a relationship building hormone. And we love that hormone. And that's what we want to provide when we lead with empathy. So how do you apply empathy in everything you do, not just when you talk to clients, but everything you're putting out, whether it's email or public statements? Check your tone. It's really important. Begin every message, whether it's internal talking to your staff or with clients, with, does this feel like it's coming from someone who cares? So just check yourself, take a breath and be like, I'm stressed out too, but I have to be the one to lead this organization. I have to be the one that's calm and showing how much I really care. Use clear and calm words. Don't use insurance jargon. Say something like, your safety comes first. Once you're safe, we're here to help you through the next steps. There's something called an emotional sequence when you're sending out a message. It's called acknowledgement, validation, and guidance. I'm going to go through that in the next slide, but it's really important here that you train any spokespeople in your organization on empathy, like communicating with empathy. So the first thing is acknowledge. You want to acknowledge and not skip over that this is a stressful time. I remember early on in my insurance career, someone had a claim, a big one. I'm like, I'm really sorry. Like, I'm really sorry. This must be really stressful and overwhelming. And I had a call review, the quality control, like, you're not supposed to say anything negative. I'm like, what do you mean? You're like, you just said this is a stressful time for them. And I was like, it is a stressful time for them. Like, we can't ignore that it's not a stressful time for them. And I was dinged because I used the word stressful when I should have been more positive. Well, you have to meet the tone. You can't just, you have to put yourself in their shoes. You have to connect with them on an emotional level. So acknowledge. We know the past few days have been overwhelming and stressful for so many in our community. Okay, so you're acknowledging this. This is, by the way, an email communication that's going out. Next step is to validate their feelings, okay? It's completely normal to feel uncertain right now, especially when answers are really hard to find. Like, so you're basically saying it's confusing. We get it. Like, we don't really know what's happening. There aren't any answers right now. And then the next is try to provide some guidance, okay? That's why we're here. If your property was impacted, here's how to get started with your claim and the next steps you should expect to see. So you're showing them, okay, this is confusing. We're going to guide you through this. Here are the next steps. Okay, so this brings me to my second tenet of crisis communications. And this is the one I see missing the most from pretty much every insurance company and brokerage out there, is they're not proactive, they're reactive. And that is a big missed opportunity. Okay, so because when something catastrophic happens, like a wildfire, an evacuation from a flood, or a system outage, or a pandemic, let's not forget, not hearing from your insurance provider is really one of the most stressful experiences a client can have. If it's like radio silence. Why? Well, because silence fuels anxiety, and you know what I'm talking about, okay? Has anybody gone through that anxiety? What is it? What do you call it? That anxiety, like where you just keep constantly focused on the worst case scenario, even if you don't have data backing it up. And when people don't have information, they sit quietly and they go into, they start to unravel. Their anxiety starts to go up and up and up and up and up, okay? They start scanning for threats, perceivable or unperceivable threats, and they start to imagine worst case scenarios. And guess what happens in the space of silence and uncertainty? That's when misinformation starts to thrive. And this is something called, a phenomenon called the intolerance of uncertainty. We as a human species don't like to sit with uncertainty. We need answers. We need facts. We need to know what's going to happen. And when those facts and answers aren't there, we either go into group mentality. So we kind of cling to others who don't know, and then we somehow make up a narrative, a false narrative together. Or we get into a mode of something called confirmation bias or negativity bias, where we look for cues, perceived or real cues, to feed the bias that we already have. And that bias could be, oh, my insurance company just wants my money. They don't care about me. They're probably going to tell me my coverage is denied. I'm so angry at them right now. Okay? And this can happen within the first hour of an evacuation. That's how quick these spirals, that's what I call the anxiety spiral, can happen. So when you are doing proactive communications, you're anticipating questions before they're asked. offering updates before pressure really builds, okay? And you're showing your client that you're there for them, even if you don't have all the answers. Why it matters. You want to fill in the silence that would otherwise be filled with fear, misinformation, or frustration. You want to position your brokerage as someone that's an organization that's steady and prepared and caring. You want to build trust before you deliver maybe messages that are tougher messages from them to hear from you, like, hey, you actually have policy limits, or you know what, this is not technically covered. You want to build that trust and caring in the event that you do have to communicate something a little negative. And it shows clients that you're actually watching out for them as the situation unfolds. Okay. So how do you apply it? The biggest thing I tell people, please have a holding statement, because even a partial update is more effective in a crisis than nothing at all. They don't expect perfection, they expect presence. I'm going to repeat that. And this is hard for brokers. This is hard for us because we want to have all the facts. We want to have all the underwriting. So, like, we want to have everything built out before we communicate. What's Aviva doing? What's Intact doing? What's Walmanisa doing? And it takes time. Like, coordinating 12 different markets takes time. It takes days. But we don't want perfection. We want presence. And that's what that holding statement does. A holding statement should be communicated within the first 30 minutes of an evacuation, let's say, or a crisis unfolding. And it communicates partial information. I want to say partial, not incorrect or misleading information, just partial information. And that should start with what you know, what you are doing, and when you're going to update again. And you want to make sure before you send anything out in the public that you are communicating and updating and training your internal stakeholders first. So your client-facing team, your sales team, anybody who is speaking to the public, your team leads, they need to be on the same page with what you're communicating at all times. So here's what a holding statement looks like and the different sections that go into it. So this is a wildfire evacuation email, and we know there's so many wildfires currently going on in BC, in Saskatchewan, in Newfoundland, in the Maritimes, where we don't often see fires. So this is going to happen. I suggest you prepare this now. You can even use this template. Okay, subject. We're here for you. Wildfire support and claims process. Hey, we're closely monitoring the wildfire activity in your region, and we know how stressful and uncertain this time can be. Your safety comes first. Please follow all local evacuation orders and take precautions for your health and well-being. So that opening statement it's acknowledgement and empathy. It acknowledges the event and leads with care. And why does it work? It calms that brain, that cortisol that's spiking, even from seeing an email from their insurance company, and starting to let that neurotransmitter of oxytocin leak through and help calm you down. You want to be very clear in your positioning, okay? If your home or property has been affected, we are here to support you. This is what we're doing. We're coordinating with your insurer to assist you as quickly as possible. What does this do? It signals that you're being proactive. You're taking proactive action behind the scenes so that you care, you're there for them. Wow. Why it works. It reassures your client that you're already working in their best interest on their behalf, even if they didn't ask you to. It's proactive. They're not asking you. They haven't called in with a claim, but you're still trying to help them in the background. And then what to do now. This is really important. If you've been affected, call this. For an emergency, reach out to this. For the most up-to-date information, visit these resources, okay? This gives simple, direct instructions, and it cuts through the overwhelm that people might feel. And then you want to leave with a promise of continued communication. It's one thing to do that holding statement, but if you don't communicate anything after, that's really bad. That's really bad. Because again, that anxiety, that confirmation negativity bias starts to brew in again. Well, they said they were going to so they sent me this holding statement and I haven't heard from them in 2 weeks. What is happening? Is my claim being processed? What do I do? I'm out of my home for 2 weeks. How do I pay for things? So the last thing you want to do is have silence even after you've sent out that holding statement. And don't worry, I'm going to go through a timeline of how to respond to things. So we'll continue providing updates as the situation evolves. And in the meantime, if you're unsure about your coverage or next steps, please reach out. We're here for you. Okay, so we are in insurance and we speak in technical terms all the time. That's how we're trained. That's what our license exams are. We speak the technical language to protect ourselves from an E&O. All of the policy wording is very difficult to understand legalese. So you're already stressing people out if they see that technical language. I don't know what this means. Like, my house is burning down. Like, what is indemnity? Like, what are you talking? What is this endorsement business? What are you talking about? Just give me the plain language. Okay, because again, that cortisol hormone is spiking. They're already overwhelmed. So when the cortisol spikes, it reduces the brain's ability to think rationally and logically because they're in that fight or flight mode, okay? And you want to try to cut through that anxiety. So you want to be as clear as possible. And how do you do that? I love this quote so much. Complicated feels like avoidance and simplicity feels like transparency. And it's so true. Think of anything that happens in your life. When someone communicates to you, for instance, sometimes I get these emails from, let's say, Nova Scotia Power, and like, gosh, some of the terminology is super complicated. I'm like, what do you like? Why is there extra charges? Like, where is this coming from? What is this like 7-word thing that you're charging me an extra $75 for? It feels sketchy. But when you say something like, hey, there's a new charge coming in because of, let's say, summertime influx of air conditioners going on, we have to protect the grid. So just for these 2 months, we're charging $75 extra to blah, 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 blah. For more information, visit this page. Complicated feels like avoidance. Simplicity feels like transparency. I'm going to show you that in action, okay? So here's an email you might send out to, and I've seen this, okay, that you might send out to people who have additional living expenses. It's, dear policyholder, this message is to inform you that if you have been mandatorily evacuated as a result of a recent overland flooding event, your homeowner's policy may respond to additional living expenses pursuant to Section 1, Coverage D of your contract. ALE provides indemnity for necessary increases in living costs. I mean, already someone's like, what are you talking about? What the heck? However, if we simplify the language, okay, without the risk of E&O, you could say something like, again, begin with empathy. We know this is an incredibly stressful time, and evacuating your home can feel really overwhelming and uncertain. Your home insurance policy includes additional living expenses coverage, which means you're covered for the additional costs of being away from your home, like hotel stays, meals, and emergency transportation. And then you lay out what's covered, what's not covered, and their policy limits, and also keep your receipts. Very simple. Someone can be like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm not reading through technical language. I'm already stressed out and I don't understand, and they're trying to avoid helping me because complicated feels like avoidance. So this is really important because, and I'm going to go through how misinformation can really damage an insurance company or brokerage's reputation. You need a single source of truth for both your external clients and stakeholders and your internal teams, because especially during a big crisis, you're getting bulletins from insurance companies emailed left and right. You're getting media updates. You're getting a lot of things coming at brokers who are talking to staff or your communications team who are sending out these emails. And sometimes bulletin will come out and then a second bulletin will come out with more information or clarity or say, hey, actually, this is what we're doing. And you might miss that second bulletin. So, like I said, during a crisis, information changes very quickly. And, a lot of people don't have time, especially frontline staff, don't have time to swift through their inbox and try to memorize what's the most recent information. And I believe QuickFacts has a dashboard, or QuickFacts, if you don't know it, they're like a resource that kind of compiles all the underwriting manuals, insurance bulletins. I think they have a section where it's just the most recent insurer bulletins all organized. So that's something you might want to look into. I remember that was really stressful when I was doing insurance crisis communications at the broker level. It was like trying to understand what the most recent information was. So you want to centralize that, because if someone says something wrong, it could spread so quickly and cause just chaos. And also, just so you know, and I don't know if you know this, but this is a very well-known stat that false news and social media reaches its first 1,500 people 6 times faster than the truth. So you're already competing with social media platforms that want to spread negative, fake news, and you don't want to be a part of that noise. In fact, you want to know what's up to date. So I want to just quickly go into how one missed bulletin can wreak chaos and cause a possible E&O and widespread misinformation at your brokerage. Get ready for this. This is how fast it can happen. I've seen it. Okay. There's a fire happening close to, let's say, a small BC town, let's say Nelson, okay? Someone from BC, from Nelson calls, be like, hey, I want to make sure, actually, you know what, let's do flooding because fire's always covered. Let's do flooding because fire's always covered. Tanya, come on. So let's say there's flooding in a small town of Nelson, BC, like in the mountain area, there's flooding. Hasn't reached the city yet, but, there's high water tables. And a customer calls in and says, hey, I want to make sure I have overland flooding on my policy. And the broker's like, yeah, I'll add it for you right away. But that broker missed the binding restriction and effect bulletin that came in through for all the surrounding BC towns in the area where the flooding might happen, or that there's increasing water table and flooding is imminently going to happen. That couple that called in to get their coverage was so excited that they were able to get overland before their house was hit for flooding that they went over social media and said, oh my gosh, I have the best broker. They gave me overland coverage. This is awesome. You guys hit them up. You'll get overland coverage too. Be safe, be protected. So then the person who sees that post calls in 12 hours later and says, hey, my friend, Joe Schmo, and his wife got coverage on their house for overland insurance. I really need that for mine. I realize I don't have it on my policy. Can you add it? And the other broker, a different broker, picks up the phone. He's like, oh, no, there's an underwriting binding restriction in effect for all houses in that area, which typically happens when there's a catastrophic weather-related event unfolding in the area. That person is angry. They felt lied to. That insurance company is terrible. They're just trying to make a buck. They're not here to help me. They do a 1-star review for the brokerage. What happens 14 hours later? 14 hours later, it's the next day. The underwriter looks at the funds, be like, whoa, this broker's cray-cray. They did not see that there is an underwriting restriction in that area. So obviously I'm denying overland insurance coverage. 24 hours later, the broker calls the customer back and says, actually, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. I didn't see the restriction. I actually can't give you overland water insurance on your coverage because there was a binding restriction. Well, that person goes all over social media and be like, worst company ever. They don't care about you. They lie to me. Now I'm being denied coverage on my house during the worst time of my life where I'm about to lose everything. And then 48 hours later, you went from having 5-star reviews on Google down to 2.3-star reviews because people are angry and it's that mob group mentality. Oh, and plus you're faced with an E&O because probably they're going to try to sue you for coverage for the house. That is how fast. So that's 48 hours of how your reputation can be ruined through misinformation. So let's go back to that single source of truth, okay? So externally, I would recommend having a Fire landing page on your website. So if you are on our TrueWeb platform, you have the ability to build landing pages super quickly, like within minutes, because we just have it like really easy to do. You don't have to be an IT specialist or a web developer to do it, and it's really easy to keep updating those web pages as well as you go. If you are not with TrueWeb, you will have to contact your web provider or your IT teams to build that for you. So here on your landing page, you would have different, whatever you think you need. So for me, the most important is claims, emergency claims, contact information for all of the different carriers you work with. Maybe some key websites that people should be following, like fire update websites, media sites that's constantly updating people. Let's just, for example, the city of Calgary, maybe their YouTube channel where they do their pressers and live updates. Maybe click to have a link that clicks to the evacuation map, and then maybe talk about ALE and how to access it. You can have and a big one for me is an FAQ page and anticipating those most commonly asked questions and having it all laid out there. And that helps with the call volumes that do come in during these catastrophic claims, because there's nothing worse than having a 2-hour call hold and during a time of uncertainty, when your phone hold script can be like, visit our emergency wildfire page at www.here, or go to your mobile app to submit a claim right away. So give them the ability to do something quickly, act quickly, so they're not annoyed and waiting for 2 hours on the phone to ask for advice or ask questions for a broker. Internally, if you have a SharePoint or an intranet site, please update files and bulletins as they're coming in and put recent as of date. So recent as of June 11th at 2:23 p.m. Okay, and delete any of the old bulletins that are no longer effective or unuseful. Or please check out QuickFacts. I'm pretty sure that they do that. And so I think that would be a lot better than constantly trying to update or having someone on the back end trying to figure out which bulletin is the most recent. And this leads me to our fifth and final tenet that I will be speaking about here, and that's the multi-channel strategy. You need to be where your clients are. Some people might not have access to the internet when a crisis is unfolding, and they only have access to text. Some people are all over social media, and that's how they intake information, while some prefer only email communications. So you have to be varied with how you're trying to transmit your messages. So some channels could include social media, email, text messages, push notification, your website landing pages. And also what's really important to be aware of is cognitively, we learn different. Some people are oral learners, some people are visual learners, some people need to see something 10 times, some people need clarity, short and sweet and to the point, which that landing page is great for. So not only is it the channel, but the format for how you're communicating that will have the most impact. So that would be like a video update. You can write blogs, landing pages, white papers, infographics, FAQs. And the science behind that is people will miss these communications. So unless they're communicated multiple times. It's called the redundancy effect. So repeating key messages across channels helps encode the information more deeply into the memory. And there were some studies about this. And one of them was the forgetting curve. So people actually forget up to 70% of new information within 24 hours, unless it's reinforced. So when people are like, oh, but I already sent an email, so isn't it redundant if I also send them a text message? Absolutely not. In a time of crisis, repeat the information. It is not redundant, trust me. So let's go and talk about the rest of the tenets for crisis communications. I'm not going to go over them, but you have train your staff before a crisis happens, design a key spokesperson who can talk to the media. They're trained to talk to the media in case they have to release statements or often what happened to us, we'd be interviewed by CBC News. So we had a spokesperson who was trained in the media to do that. You want to monitor and listen very carefully of what people are saying and what's going on in the news and social media, so you can get in front of any negativity that might arise. align with your brand values. So make sure that your core values are aligning with how you communicate. Prepare everything in advance, including templates, and I'll show you how to do that. So there is a thread that binds all of these pieces together that is crucial for a crisis communications plan, and that is speed. Okay, speed. The reason why you have a crisis communications plan is that you can react with confidence and clarity as fast as possible. So when we're building the plan, speed is the byproduct of our preparation. Here are the core elements of a crisis communications plan that actually helps enable speed and response, speed and confidence, and empowerment when responding to a crisis. I'll go through every element in more depth, but I just want to go over, this is what your crisis communications plan is going to look like. Like, these are the pieces that have to go into it, okay? So you have your plan element, which is your risk and stakeholder map. So you're going to look at your top threats. So is it flooding, flood, pandemic? Who knew? I knew I wasn't prepared for that. Or whatever catastrophic event you can think of. And then you need to identify your key audiences, okay? Governance and roles. Who does what? Who does what and what's their responsibility in this crisis? Have that single source of truth. Here's our single source of truth that's going to be for external. Here's our single source of truth that we're going to keep updated for internal teams. Make sure you have pre-written templates so that they're ready to go. You just have to tweak a few things to allow those messages to go out as fast as possible. And you do want to make sure you have partner alignment. So what does that mean? So partner alignment can be like working with your insurance company so that you're both on the same page on what to expect when there's a CAT claim about to happen. And then you want to train and do CAT drills. I remember I did this with Sharp Insurance. I think we did it semi-annually. We would train on what to happen when there's a crisis. Usually it was like a mass power outage. Like, how do we handle that? How do we communicate? What do we do? So you kind of want to practice that. So because it's like muscle memory. As soon as a crisis happened, if you practice it, you like can jump into action without like feeling stressed or anxious and do that like fight or flight mode. You just go into action mode. So for your risk and stakeholder map, here are the typical stakeholder groups that you would have in your crisis communications plan. So obviously you have your policyholders, your clients, your internal teams, your carriers, restoration partners, the media and public, and any regulatory bodies that might need to be involved. And I also have a column of what they need to know. So for instance, for your clients, like you need to identify who's affected, does the coverage apply to them, how to file a claim, safety and evacuation info. For your internal teams, what do they say to clients? Where are the latest updates? If they're actually going to, like, say their house has burned down, you need to have mental health resources available, okay? For insurance partners, shared messaging, understanding their claims protocol, kind of working together to speed up that process. And you can kind of, I'll include that in the blueprint for you so that you have it. Okay. We're getting there, I promise. This is the last section. We have a couple more pieces, and then you'll have the ability to build this crisis comms strategy within your own brokerage. Thank you for sticking with me. I know this is a lot of information coming at you, and we've been at this for 50 minutes, but has it been 50 minutes? I don't even know. About 50 minutes, but we're coming to the end. So just take a breath. I'm going to have some water. We've got this. So governance and roles is super important, okay? Because in order to have quick fire communications, you need to know, like everybody in the organization needs to know who is doing what. So you need to have a crisis lead that approves everything. Who's the one go-to person that's going to approve all messaging that's going out, okay? And you can also have pre-approved messaging, like a holding statement that always goes out. Your communications lead who's in charge of making sure all the marketing communications are aligned and everything's going out smoothly and you have the right contact list and you're contacting the right people. Your internal comms lead, so your comms manager is making sure, or sometimes if if you don't have someone who does internal communications, it could be your comm specialist, or it could be a team lead or manager that's making sure that everybody on the teams internally know what they're saying, know where to find information, and are in the loop. Your insurer liaison, and your technology and IT lead. So make sure the tech stack that you have is actually equipped to handle the things you need to do for your crisis communication strategy. Okay, and this is really important. I actually have these pre-written and ready in HubSpot in case of like a disaster happening. Your holding statement, have that ready. And that holding statement is, we know this is a scary time, blah, blah, blah. We are monitoring the situation. We're going to give you updates as the situation unfolds. Then you have the evacuation alert, okay? Like that is pretty standard that you can send to homeowners. So, hey, you've been evacuated. You may not know that you have this coverage called ALE, kind of that email template I showed you sooner. And then your social media posts are really important, okay, because that reaches a wider audience, not just your clients, and then people in the community in general can see how well you've reacted during a time of crisis. So that could be something like, hey, our thoughts are with anyone impacted by the Bubba fires. If you're evacuated or been affected, we're here to help. Visit our emergency fire information page here. And the FAQs that I talked about, which are really important. Like the biggest one is, what does a policy cover during a wildfire evacuation, etc. Your channel matrix, as we talked about, that multi-channel outreach is super important, very important. So the channels could look like email, text messaging, website, social media, internal SharePoint folder, a phone tree. Actually, we did the phone tree during the pandemic where we activated the phone tree to tell people, hey, full stop. Everybody is in, nobody's allowed to, oh my God, what is it called? I just left it. The pandemic has really left its mark on me because I can't remember what it's called. We're all in isolation. We can't leave our house. You have to work from home. We did the call tree to make sure everybody knew that because things were unfolding really quickly. Videos, having social media short form videos to help calm people down, explain what's happening, explain certain coverages is great, especially for people who are more visual learners. And then have some press release PR statements ready in the event that you have to respond. Partner alignment. So make sure that you and your carriers understand what needs to happen in the event of a CAT claim. Like, so for instance, you don't want to so carrier ABC confirms that binding restrictions in flood zone, there's flood restrictions in zone 10 at this time, so make sure that you're always up to date, know what's going on, and having those relationship with key underwriters who might be able to give you that information a little bit earlier than when it's released is a little tidbit. Be friendly with your underwriters and they'll give you the juicy news before it actually comes out officially, so you're prepared. Your tech providers, so that you know what their technology is capable of. So can you do SMS text messaging? Can you send push notifications and your media contacts? So this is also a great way to get in front of a larger audience. So if you have contacts at CBC, CTV, say, hey, we'd love to speak about the crisis that's unfolding. We have insurance experience. If people are uncertain, you can kind of get in front of that and be kind of like the public spokesperson. It's great. Drills. Practice with your teams. You can do tabletop exercises where you do card games. Be like, hey, we're in this situation. You're a customer service representative. You're marketing. You're the crisis lead. How do you respond? Obviously, before you do the drill, they should read the crisis communications plan first, and then you start playing those drills so people know how to respond. And now I'm going to do the quick timeline of how fast these communications need to happen at the time of a crisis, okay? So you get an alert that a fire evacuation is happening just outside the city of Calgary. So in the first 5 minutes, when you get that alert, your crisis lead needs to confirm and validate that information. Once that crisis lead has confirmed and validated that information, they go to the comms lead. And together, they send out an internal alert. Whether it's Teams, Slack, email, all channels, and notify people about the unfolding situation within your teams. Then you want to release that holding statement within the first 30 minutes. Hey, there's a fire unfolding right outside Calgary in these areas that are being impacted. This is what we know right now. This is this is when we're going to update you next. We'll communicate with you as the situation unfolds. All right. Then after that, in 45 minutes, post the event. That's when you have to have that landing page ready. So coordinate with this, look at what the city of Calgary has up. Look at what's evacuation kits, what you need to take with you, how to protect your home, leave the sprinkler on, things like that. That should all be in your evacuation page. You should have an ALE section, as I said, and you should have claims emergency numbers all laid out, okay? For that's in 45 minutes of being alerted. That messaging has gone out in 30 minutes, and that landing page should be up by 45 minutes. That is when you send out the ALE email. Okay, so in 60 minutes, you need to be able to pull by postal code who's been evacuated. Okay, by postal code, who's been evacuated, who has home insurance, so that you can send out the ALE evac email saying, hey, we know this is a scary time. We know you've just been evacuated. Please keep your receipts. You do have additional living expenses coverage that covers you for this, not for this. These are your policy limits. And then by 75 minutes, you should have your social media posts up. So from 0 to 60 minutes is when you send out that first ALE email. 0 to 30 is that holding statement. So how many of you, quickly, I know we're running out of time, how many of you feel confident that you can do that in 60 minutes, especially with how you're able to get data out of your BMS? That's a big problem in our industry, is data, access to insights and hyper segmentation. This is a problem. I've worked with at least 60 brokerages across Canada, and that is the main complaint, is the inability to hyper segment quickly their book of business. Because oftentimes through the BMS, there's no way to filter by impact zone, postal code, carrier, type of coverage. There's really no macro view of your book of business. Like, you can't see a heat map of how many of your clients are impacted in the area. And so, and you don't know who has sewer backup and who has ALE on a macro level, which doesn't inform how you should respond. And everything is fragmented. So you might have to go to the BMS to pull this list. Then you have to go to the carrier to pull another list. Then you have to do a merge of the spreadsheet. And then you have to go to Constant Contact, MailChimp, or whatever email marketing tool you're using. Upload that contact list with the dynamic fields. And so that could take days to do that, just to communicate an ALE email. And so True Mobile was built for quick fire communications. In fact, during the Fort McMurray fires that happened about 10 years ago, before we even had this hyper segmentation, customer filtering ability within True Mobile, Sarah, like Rogers now, Sarah had to come to us to get the right information, the right policy information, to look at the evac postal codes and areas to send out quick fire messages. And the reason for that is their BMS just was not capable of that type of hyper segmentation. But because they were on the mobile app, our developers could just be like, yeah, here's your list, 2 minutes. And that was the real impetus for us to actually build that filter builder within True Mobile and that hyper segmentation. And then from there, you build an email. So we actually have evacuation alert emails built in to our CP360, which is the communication emailing automation platform that we have within True Mobile. So all of this can be sent out within 1 minute. 1 minute. That's it. Under 60 seconds, you can send out an ALE. So I do urge you, if you're not a True Mobile client, to grab a demo with us to see how it works, because as you can see, we are in a time of catastrophic claims. Climate change is at an all-time high. We went from a period where on average we had $1 to $3 billion of claims since 2013. And last year we saw 8.5 billion in claims. We are already strong into forest fire season right now. And they're predicting that hurricane season on the East Coast is going to be the most severe this year. So I want you guys to be prepared. I want you to be there for your clients. I want you to build those strong connections and be a community leader, leading with empathy, and really, really, really doing what brokers do best, which is boots on the ground, helping your clients recover from a disaster. And boots on the ground could also mean empathy, embracing information transfer digitally as well. So that's it. Thank you for sticking with me for these 60 minutes. I am going to send out either today or tomorrow an email with all the resources. Okay, so I did build a crisis communications blueprint that I'm going to send you that you can use to build your own. I'm going to give you a copy of this presentation. I'm going to give you a recording of this webinar as well. I'm going to give you a blog recap. So if you just want to share with people what you learned, but like quick and easy, I'm going to do a quick blog recap. Get in touch with me. If you have any questions or you're trying to set up your own crisis plan, or there was something in there I talked about that you weren't quite certain of, or you have other opinions, I'd love to hear your experiences. You can also follow me on LinkedIn, and you can visit our website for more information. I'm going to hop on camera now in case there's any questions for the next couple minutes. But again, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you for joining me today. Bye, everybody.